This is Wretched Radio with Todd Friel.
How often do you have the privilege of having Phil Johnson in your radio studio? Well, lately, frankly, a lot, which is a shock to all of us. This is Wretched Radio. Phil Johnson, grace to you. Also, gracelifepulpit.com. I cannot encourage you enough to go there, get it plugged into your doohickey with the thingamajig so you can hear his sermons.
Your
How many
what?
do you have? Well, the current language that the kids
Doohickey?
use. Yeah, that's exactly correct.
Doohickey? What's a doohickey?
It's slightly different than a doohickey, you see.
It's like a doohickey
okay.
when
I
you
didn't want
stutter a
anybody to
little.
think that we were endorsing hickeys, so I was just being thoughtful, Joey. Phil, how many
there we
sermons
go.
do you have archived?
I have no clue. I've lost count.
Excellent. Wait a second. I've got to turn on the mic. Hold on. Let me push the button. How many sermons do you have archived there, Phil?
Not a clue. I
Excellent.
don't count them. I don't even maintain that website. Somebody else does that, and
Once again, you're in good hands here at Wretched Radio. Let's see if you know something about the Willow Creek story, which we want to talk about. To share with us, the leadership has decided, in light of the Bill Hybels accusations, it did not appear that it was handled thoughtfully.
Yeah.
All right. Now, before we get into how the leadership has handled it, and I suspect you might have some experience with this somewhere along the line. You've been in ministry 75 years?
no, about 45.
That's it?
Yep.
Okay, we'll just make two. So somewhere in your travels, you've run into a situation where, let's just use the genders, a female has made an accusation about somebody in the congregation, or in this case, the pastor. We recognize that actual sins like that happen.
Right.
We also recognize that sometimes people lie. And so if you defend it anyway, let's say the pastor in this case, which is what they did at Willow Creek, they came out trying to defend the pastor, it made them look very insensitive to all women.
Right.
But if they had just thrown Bill Hybels under the bus, that wouldn't have been proverbial either, to find
Right.
both sides and wait. So until some sort of determination can be made, how does a church find that balance?
If only Scripture gave us guidance, right?
Right?
Well, Scripture does say when there's an accusation against an elder that there needs to be at least 2 or 3 witnesses, which means if someone comes and makes an accusation like that, that's one witness. If they have evidence, say a tape recording or whatever, that would count as a second witness. But if it's just my word against his, you're really forbidden to take that at face value. But then, if you've got multiple women coming and making similar claims, you have to investigate that thoroughly and seriously. And I think that's where the leadership at Willow Creek failed, because it wasn't just one woman making a claim. It was a group of women or a series of women who made similar kinds of charges.
All right, but I want to talk, let's talk about the women in this instance. Because this is, if any sort of sexual harassment or worse took place, like that's really wicked.
That is really wicked.
Oh,
but, when you're talking about a pastor, even if it's consensual, any kind of sexual indiscretion, anything that would violate the commandment not to commit adultery would disqualify him. So these are serious allegations.
They're very serious. But my question, I'm trying to zero in on one thing. The woman, you want to say all that you just said, but if you say that to the woman, I know we're talking on the radio, so it's
Right.
you don't sound like you're being sympathetic at all. But how do we say to the woman, "Wow, we feel horrible with you. We weep with you.
Right.
Let us check this out and pursue it," without telling her, "Absolutely, you're right." How do you manage that?
Well, that's part of pastoral listening. You have to listen sympathetically to something like that, and not be accusatory in return. You can't say, "Well, I can't listen to your accusations unless there's another witness." You have to handle it in a more delicate and sympathetic way. Listen to her. Listen to the whole story. Ask questions. In the end, you're going to have to say to her, "Look, we need to investigate this. Biblically, we're required to investigate it, and we need 2 or 3 witnesses to establish a case or even an accusation against a pastor." And so, help us out with that. Help us get justice and have the right thing be done. I've found it's it is true that sometimes false accusations are made, and usually these are egregious cases. And many of them have made the news, and you know about these accusations that turn out to be false. And that can destroy men's lives. So it's a serious issue. But at the same time, in my experience, more often the accusations are grounded in truth. So you have to take it seriously.
Yeah.
And women don't. Most women are not inclined to make up stories like that are just made out of whole cloth, totally false.
I agree.
It happens. I mean, you see it even in Genesis with Joseph and Potiphar's wife and that kind of thing. So it happens. You have to allow for that possibility. But the prudent thing to do as a pastor is to listen sympathetically to the woman who is making the charge, ask her the appropriate questions, find out as many facts as you can, and then discreetly begin to do the investigation. If you find there are more than one witness, more than one charge like that, then you are duty-bound to take it very seriously and investigate to the hilt.
Rick Thomas said something very helpful. He does a ton of biblical counseling. If the woman is telling the truth, we weep with her because an awful thing has happened. If the woman is lying, we can weep with her because there's another sinful situation now that needs to be dealt with. So no matter what, we can weep with her without giving the message that you're absolutely right.
That's right. When you hear a story like this, you have to think this is the most tragic kind of situation you have to deal with as a pastor, because one way or the other,
it's a mess.
Yeah, and someone has disqualified himself, and if it's the pastor, and with increasing frequency, it seems to me, there are stories that suggest that, pastors are guilty of this. You can't say, well, a pastor would never do this, because it's happened lots of times.
Okay, I wasn't going to pursue this, but I'm going to pursue this. We've seen recently a number of high-profile cases, and I'm not looking for a commentary on any of them. But my issue is, how is it that pastors can even think they can get away with this? What is missing in the church context? I know from my day, and maybe we just have a different relationship, but I always know where my wife is, and she always knows where I am, and we don't feel like we're balling and chaining.
Right.
That's just the way it is. My computer's wide open. Anybody can look and see what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I couldn't go have an affair if I wanted to go have an affair. How do these guys do it?
Because they don't cultivate that kind of accountability. And in fact, just look at recent discussions about this, what they call the Billy Graham rule or the Pence rule.
Right.
This came up in the secular news because Vice President Pence said he would not ride in a car alone with a woman. He wouldn't have lunch alone with a woman who's not his wife. And he was mocked terribly for that. And even among Christians, some said, well, that's legalism. That's, actually they criticized him for it. So you shouldn't follow a rule like that because it's legalistic. It seems to me to be prudent. I wouldn't make a legalistic rule that you have to do that, but don't tell me I'm legalistic because I follow that. I want to set boundaries around my life and reputation so that these charges would not come up. And it's the same with Darlene and I. I trust her implicitly. I have no suspicion that she would ever. And yet, I have my iPhone set and she has her iPhone set so that if I ever want to know where she is, I can look it up. It's not so I can track her and monitor her. But we've all had those experiences where I go, well, she's late. Did she get waylaid in traffic or whatever? It's easy just to look. And I love having that kind of accountability with her. She can look at any time and find out exactly where I am. And the GPS on my phone pinpoints it to the point where she doesn't have to wonder. I don't want her to have to wonder.
Okay, there's two follow-up questions to that. Number one, okay, let's just say a pastor has some of those things on there. There still has got to be a way for this guy to be able to get out of the church office and go do his dalliance.
Right.
Is it because when it comes to hey, I'm up, got a situation, can't tell you about it, confidentiality and all. I'm going to be counseling somebody, and off he can go for the afternoon, lying to everybody. Is that maybe a hole in the pastoral model that needs to be filled?
Could be. It could be. I mean, as a matter of policy at Grace Church, for example, the pastoral offices are all in one area of the church, and every one of them has a window in the door,
right,
so that you can always at least look in there and see if the guy's there, see what's going on. And it's not just because there's distrust. It's because, there's a lot of benefits to that, but it also, does have the benefit of ensuring that no one can close his door and do something there that he wouldn't want someone else to see. And the same thing is true with that, what you're describing. When he's out and around and all of that, it really, I think, is helpful to have some kind of accountability.
Right.
Again, I wouldn't want to make a rule and say, you have to do this in every circumstance, because there are times when emergencies come up and you've got to run out, and, nobody can be in touch with accountability all the time. And I've often said this, when people come to me and say, well, I have a problem with pornography and I want to be accountable to you, I always say, how are you going to be accountable? I'm not going to monitor your computer.
And you can lie and all of that.
Yeah, if it's a problem with you, you're going to lie to me anyway. And I strongly suspect that in the worst cases, people who seek that kind of accountability are actually looking for somebody they can blame when they get caught in a failure.
Oh, excellent. All righty. I still want to follow up on this business because
Okay.
I just don't even know how these guys can do it. I mean, I can hardly keep my own home straight in my head, let alone juggling two with Phil Johnson next on Wretched Radio.